to another episode of the Alter Your Health podcast, your source of information and inspiration when it comes to the holistic transformation of your health and the health of our planet. I'm your host, Dr. Benjamin Alter. Thank you for taking the time to be with me, to be with us, and share this experience here today as we raise the vibe and expand our consciousness when it comes to holistic health and well-being. And our guest today is going to support that process. The first time I met him, he was literally shaking a rattle, chanting, and telling me to breathe into my belly as he was facilitating a large group breathwork kind of session at a yoga festival. And I got to know this guy better and got to understand what he does on a little deeper level. But to be honest with you, I still don't really get it. And it's really just this masterful art of blending so many things: shamanism, breath work, plant medicine, and, magic. I don't know what other word to use. And but it is magic, and it's also science. So this is really kind of an interesting conversation where we're talking about physics and we're talking about metaphysics, right? And things that I love. So really happy to introduce our guest, Michael Brian Baker. He is the founding member of the Breath Center, which is a world-renowned experiential and educational program, that organization that's dedicated to the continued research, highest and best practices, and code of conduct concerning the facilitation of breathwork. His primary focus is the acceleration of awareness around emotional intelligence and the integral teachings of the yogic art of pranayama. Michael and his team continuously seek fresh, creative ways to expand its interface and infusion into contemporary Western culture. He has served as a physician's liaison and program developer in conjunction with Bastyr University's naturopathic curriculum, and has acted as an independent organizer within the International Corporate Wellness and Conscious Festival community. Michael holds a firm vision of unity and world peace, travels extensively, and maintains public teachings and private offerings based out of Ojai, California. So I want to dive right into this one with Michael Baker, and I want to encourage you, as always, to take a deep breath, sit back, relax, and listen to this one with an open mind, an open heart. And as always, I encourage you to leave some feedback, rating, review on the podcast, wherever you're listening in from, whether it's YouTube or iTunes or whatever. So take a breath again. And enjoy this one with Michael Brian Baker. All right, here we are. We're rolling. And Michael Brian Baker, long time no see. Great to connect, and welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Benjamin. Thank you so much. I guess it's now Dr. Alter, though, right?
Doctor, whatever you want to call me.
Okay. I'll just call you Doctor.
Doc. All right, Michael.
Good to see you.
Yeah, excellent. So as I was saying, just looking forward to diving into all of the things that you are steeped in and have been steeped in for, I don't know, decades or lifetimes or whatever it is at this point. So would you like to start by just sharing the abbreviated story or background of how you have come to be where you are right now in your life?
Sure. Yeah, I'm the founding member of this group. I'd like to try to make it not too much of a chain of command. I like it to be more of a community or a communal gathering of a lot of folks that have done really, really well in their lives, that are kind of up-leveling their performance or their emotional intelligence, and it's called the Breath Center. And so it's just started, I feel like I was a pretty normal American kid, born in Cincinnati, Ohio, really into the Cincinnati Reds. Actually, my father was involved with Channel 4, and when the Cincinnati Reds were kind of the hottest baseball team in the 70s, and they won the World Series, I got an actual ball signed by everybody in the dugout, which was like Pete Rose, Dusty Baker, like all the greats, Johnny Bench. And, I grew up very, very, I'd say, just above average. The household was not without its challenges, but I played baseball and basketball and was brought up in a very kind of Western environment. And there was a great stress on education. And I guess that I tended to be more leaning towards the arts ever since I was very young. And lo and behold, after I went through my teens and most of my 20s, I ended up in the world of finance. And during that time was finding that a lot of the goals that had been set by me, based on the things that I thought I wanted, that I had accumulated over time, had left me still yet a bit empty. And I was introduced kind of kicking and screaming to yoga down in Santa Monica. And I can't say that I fell in love with it right away, but I will say that it made me feel better little by little. And over time, I was practicing on a regular basis, but still deeply steeped in the world of finance. And this was about 8 or 9 years ago, when the markets started to decline, as they continue to at this point. I don't know how we've kind of been held up for so long, but things began to change. And I don't know if you remember, but there was the largest insurance group called AIG that took a fall. And all of a sudden I had this big office and all of these clients, and we couldn't get any deals done. There was not as much debt available. And I'd already been practicing yoga for a really long time. So I kind of retreated to India. And I had already made a relationship through Dr. Richard Alpert. And a lot of people now refer to him as Ram Dass, who wrote a book that was as popular as the Bible in the late 60s, early 70s. And yes, it was a yogic lineage. And I retreated to kind of find a guru in a way, even though I'd already been introduced to Ram Dass, and he was obviously my teacher. I did studies for years and years with him, but I wanted to find like that guy in a cave that would turn me on, or enlighten me, or dissolve the pain and suffering. I thought that could be done from the outside. Somebody would touch me with a peacock feather or something, and it would all be bright and shiny. And I did have a very, very nice trip. I was given was took sannyas, which means that's when you're kind of given a Hindu name. And yet I was still very, very American at heart. And a lot of these things, although unfamiliar to many, kind of seemed familiar to me more in a way. A lot of the languaging, a lot of the concepts, I couldn't deny that they were familiar to me. And I returned to the States and ended up opening a yoga studio in West LA with a friend. And that was an amazing opportunity because we were both from two lineages. She was from the Nityananda, Muktananda, Guru Mai, what they call Siddha Yoga lineage. And I was still in the Bhakti Yoga lineage, which was tied to Neem Karoli Baba, the old man wrapped in a blanket who left his body in 1972 and has still managed to teach love and non-attachment from wherever he is now.
And that is Neem Karoli Baba is Ram Dass's guru that he references, correct?
Right. Yeah. So yeah, Ram Dass and Krishna Das and Jayu Tal and a lot of these popular kind of spiritual world music talents, including, there was actually a lot more people who were introduced to him that we weren't really aware of. Larry Brilliant, who worked for Google, and the founder of Facebook. Like, it turns out that there's a lot of very successful people that passed across the teachings of Neem Karoli Baba. And I was introduced when I got back to the States to this breath work through a Westerner, you know, and I all I can say to you is literally, and I mean this, within 7 minutes of doing this particular pattern pranayama, which now we find is a very, very sacred kind of pattern that was held secret for good reasons for a very, very long time in the tantric fire lineage and the Kriya lineage, which is a completely different lineage than Bhakti yoga, which is the yoga of service and devotion and love, that that I knew exactly what my mission was in life, and most of it was around the reverse engineering or sharing with others my own experience in my path to liberation. And I was, within 7 minutes, liberated from years and years of suffering and inner turmoil and kind of a lot of judgment and shame and guilt. And regardless of all of the things that I had acquired, it didn't fill me. But I was filled with a level of acceptance that I had never thought would come to pass. And this was, you know, after I had sat at the feet of Ram Dass and had a similar kind of what they would refer to as a God experience, where the ego kind of burned and I felt forgiven. And then the rest was kind of history, because after I'd opened the yoga studio, our lineages, I kind of tried to meld them together in this particular studio. And there are different paths for different types of people, different yogas that will help people get to the ever-present destination of freedom and joy and creativity, and for them to be on purpose in their own life, meaning that you wouldn't necessarily have to become a pranayama facilitator or a yoga teacher or somebody very spiritual, that you would free yourself with these tools so that you could do whatever you wanted to do in life, whether that was being an actor or a doctor or, you know. And we went on to do the Breath Center community home in West LA, where you and I met. We did the Feed People Outreach program, and we had a palliative care program. We were doing hot sesame oil treatments on people who were suffering with leukemia and cancer, and we were planning on going into the prisons. And then lo and behold, there was this wave of festivals and large gatherings of people that were interested in consciousness, and we were asked to come and share in those circles. And from there, it became thousands and thousands of people being exposed to these practices. And, you know, we definitely owe it all to, or a lot of it, to the production companies that welcomed us in, and those who were willing to come in and feed people or come and sit with us. And then after years and years of doing it without any remuneration, which is called seva in our practice, that means selfless service, I thought, well, I had a baby at that time who's now Elijah. He's now 6, and found that spirituality and business were not separate, right? The left and right hemispheres of the brain could join together, and that we could monetize our offerings by teaching people the true root, the ancient sacred root of pranayama. And it's just been an overwhelming response. We get more and more humbled every single day that we're moving forward. We've been asked to come and teach at naturopathic universities, which we've done, and worked with a lot of doctors. We just had the opportunity to speak at the Psychedelic Science Symposium at UCLA, and sharing with folks who are working with these plant medicines, the understanding that what happens when people ingest these things is the byproduct of what also happens through a discipline of yogic practice. and how to have the most moral and ethical behaviors and offerings around that, you know, how to create the most integration, and also make sure that we're not clumsy, that we're not offering these things to folks who may not be ready yet, but maybe just to plant a seed and say, hey, maybe not today, but we're going to be here for you. Because in the lineage, obviously, there are diet issues, or not issues, but there are certain restrictions that you would follow to purify the body, create a saatvik state in the body, and have the person aware enough of a meditation practice so that they don't get the big aha before it's time. And we're still working with that right now, and also very interested in the near future on how we can create some research with some Western medical establishments, and where we can watch the neurological patterns of the brain and what happens with an EKG, and start documenting the profound byproduct of a regular pranayama, or if people want to call it breathwork practice. So that's where we are now, and it's
right.
It's big. I hope that wasn't too long, but it kind of gives you an idea.
I'm impressed by the, you know, for the breadth of the journey. I'm impressed by the succinctness that it's come to, and wow, yeah, I know I've kind of skidded along your side for just brief parts along that journey, but I'd like to I feel like we can dive into individual things going back, but I'd like to start at that 7-minute experience with the breath work. Your introduction, what was that? What happened?
Well, the funniest thing about all of that is that I had done really well in real estate, and I was planning a trip to Bora Bora to go diving, but I actually wasn't. I had some fear. There was a lot going on in me when I was involved in real estate, because it wasn't my final destination, and yet I thought it was. I really did. And I didn't have enough self-esteem, or I wasn't sure of myself enough to travel and really have a great time. And it felt really awkward that I would be practicing tapasya and doing 42-day cleanses and be in yoga every day and be avoiding going for after dinner drinks with all of my buddies and friends at the firm, the real estate firm. And so I'd already been on a cleanse. I'd been on a cleanse for 28 days, and the holidays were coming, and all of the kind of financial institutions kind of shut down, except the banks during the holidays, because you're not going to really get anything funded or closed when people are on holiday. And so I ended up going to this little place down in Desert Hot Springs instead of Bora Bora, which was a cleansing retreat, where they had a lot of entertainment folks, or people that needed to clean up quickly, maybe for a role they were doing, or maybe people had chemical dependency issues, but they'd made it through and they really wanted to cleanse their bodies. They would go to this place down in Desert Hot Springs. And so I went there, and I was also writing my a radio show, because I wasn't giving up on the real estate business yet. So I had this radio show called Get a Grip, America's Remedy for the Housing Crisis, which followed Rachel Maddow. And it was actually on an AM radio station. And so I went down there to do that. But lo and behold, it was really expensive. And because of all of my attachment to, like, well, we're not even eating any food, I said, well, I'll do every class. I'll do every class, whatever they offer. I'm going to make sure that I get my money's worth, right? So I was doing everything that they were offering, and they offered everything from yoga to card reading. I mean, it was very broad, and they talked about alkalizing the body, everything from being introduced to a Vitamix to different juicing ways to juice. And it was actually a wonderful experience. And then here on the chart was breath work. And I said, well, I'm really tired. I'm really worn down. It was probably day 38 by then. And I was, but I wanted to adhere to what I said I'd do. And so I was standing there waiting for the teacher to arrive, and this kind of good looking, tall, thin guy walked in, and I could just tell that he was the instructor, because obviously he wasn't staying with any of us, because you get pretty close with the group of people that are there with you while you're all cleansing and trying to hold each other through, God, I really just want to eat half of an avocado. But I asked him, so what is this? And he looked at me kind of sideways, and it really triggered me. And so I left the room, and I walked back to my room, and I said, well, I can breathe while I'm napping. And I walked back to my room, and I was just about to put the key in the door. And I kid you not, I heard a voice that sounded, I can only describe it as like Poseidon, say, what are you preventing yourself from learning from somebody through somebody else's pain? It took me a second to acknowledge. It's like, am I going crazy? What is this? But it turned me around, and I went back. I laid down. He introduced it in a very neutral way. He said, hey, I've been working with this guy on this kind of cool thing. Let's all lay down, and we're going to do this active meditation. And he took me through this two-part, this fire lineage pranayama. And within 7 minutes, I was emoting. I had a somatic, physical, emotional release. And I cried for a good, I'll say 2.5 hours, maybe 3 hours straight. And everybody kept coming to me and trying to hold me and ask me what was wrong. And I kept saying, leave me alone. Like, this is what I came for. I realized that I had been preparing this whole fast, all of the yoga, all of the stuff. Here I had been led to one of the most sacred keys in the practice of yoga that normally wouldn't be disclosed unless you had 10, 20, 30 years into the practice and were with a master. And here, he's the guy who introduced it to me. And I'll always be forever grateful to him. And literally from that moment forward, I saw this bumper sticker in my meditation that said, peace sells, but who's buying? And I thought, I am. And not only am I going to buy it, but I'm going to sell it. And I realized that ever since my youth, ever since the first argument that I heard between my parents, all I wanted was peace. And I didn't understand, obviously, at that age, that this was a reflection, like a macrocosm, microcosm. This was a reflection of parts of our world, right? How we communicate with one another, unsolved or maybe unattended wounding. And I didn't know how I was going to do it. I actually thought I was going to do it through money. I didn't think that I was going to be sharing the work at that point. But basically, I bottom line is that I knew that I had to share it with other people. I went ahead and scheduled a private session with him. He came to my private room. I told you I was already kind of a nerd yogi by that time. So in my room, I had a whole altar set up, an altar. For those folks who don't know, I had my candle and pictures of my teachers and my little, what we call murti. A lot of people would refer to it as statue, but like a murti of Hanuman and probably one of Lakshmi and Durga. Like, I brought my little puja my prayer table with me. And he walked in and he was kind of surprised because he, knew me as the real estate guy. And he gave me another session. And at that point, my physical body completely, absolutely disappeared. My body was vibrating so powerfully that I was completely consumed by what I'll call universal current, so that which powers all things. And all that was left was my awareness in that space. And I can't remember exact timeline because even linear time dissolved in that experience. All that was left was love. There was no discomfort. There was no judgment. There was no critique. There was only the feeling of abundance and love and the presence of unlimited support. And he said to me, I think you may be a healer, were his words. And I said, thank you very much. I appreciate your time. You've been paid. Drive, have a safe, journey back home. And I ended up getting a book from him. He said, well, just read this book anyway. And I couldn't put it down. And it was about healing and pranayama. And I signed up for training, and it was strange and uncomfortable. And it meant that there was a lot in it for me. And I immediately, because I was supported financially during that time, I bought the whole package, everything that they had to offer. I created exchange, and I went through the levels, and I immediately started practicing. And this was exactly at the same time that the market crashed and we opened the studio. It was seamless. The events were seamless. It was one of the most single, maybe 3 most powerful experiences that I've ever had internally, for sure. I'm glad you brought it up. It's nice to actually kind of revisit it now.
Yeah, and that's David Elliott and the Reluctant Healer is the book.
The first book
correct?
was called The Reluctant Healer, and the second book is called Healing. And they're both very, very beautiful. And David is still living locally and teaching both in Los Angeles, California, and I believe, if I'm not wrong, you'd have to check on his website, thereluctanthealer.com. But I believe that he's teaching in New Mexico as well, that there are retreats there.
Yeah, excuse me. My stepfather, Jerry, he was actually the first guest on this podcast. So Jerry cool. Came on and we talked a little bit about breath work, and Jerry went through the training with David Elliott as well. And but Jerry did not share. And interestingly, Jerry's experience was with you, but he did not share what happened in the body, like what his experience was on a deep kind of cosmic level. So
I can even share a little bit more, kind of, if you're interested in like the specifics of what I actually felt.
Sure.
Because I've gotten more in touch with it, but I won't spend a lot of time on it.
Sure. Yeah. Also, if you could, Michael, also, if there's any, this is a bit weird question, but if there's any kind of explanation, maybe physiologic or scientific, what's happening in the body, what's happening in the consciousness when this breath work is being, practiced.
Yeah. So there's a couple different things. First of all, I think it would be important to say that a true yogin who follows the teachings, we know that the lungs are not utilized in the right way. We don't breathe properly.
We use about like 10% of our lung capacity.
So the yogins measure it exactly at like a liter, right? When you're breathing when you're just basically respirating every day, that you're only breathing in a liter, and the capacity of the lungs is 8. And so conscious breathing is extremely important, because they know that there are different bacteria, viruses, and diseases that are rooted at the base, or lie semi-dormant in the base of the lungs. So when we in the West do not practice pranayama or proper breathing, and our breath or respiration is restricted, it's one of the root causes of illness, because deep breath is what brings all of those what we call malefic elements up and out of the body. Okay. So when we breathe in, obviously we're breathing in oxygen, and we're expiring. When we breathe out, we are releasing carbon dioxide, which is a poison. So as we're breathing with this particular breath, we know that we are releasing more carbon dioxide and actually alkalizing the body. So when you're in the first, like maybe 7 minutes of the breath, your tongue will begin to taste acidic. The head will feel light. Sometimes you get a little bit of the dry mouth experience. And then when you get over that hump, there's a balancing factor, because the body and the system becomes more oxygenated, and the lungs actually become filled to their capacity, right? And not to get too far out, but physically, what you can begin to feel is heat or cold. You can start to feel tingling in the body. The brain waves go from very, very busy and tight, what we would call like the monkey mind, or we refer to it as chitta in yoga, CHITTA, to more elongated patterns. And that you would also move from the left hemisphere of the brain, which is the thinking, calculating, analyzing hemisphere, into more of the right hemisphere of the brain, which is the creative, open, intuitive, healing hemisphere. As the brainwaves begin to elongate, this is where we are more receptive, and rather than being reactive, we are more proactive, more patient, more skilled in our ability to be the witness and or watch. So now that sounded very kind of left brain, but in the experience, everything starts to loosen. The body becomes very, very light. Sometimes this tingling feeling, which is actually prana running through the meridian system, which I'll talk about in a second, begins to make everything really, really light. And maybe the most important piece of this is, if you have past injuries, traumas, violations, even physical ailments in the body, remember that any physical ailment is some form of stagnation in the body, right? An illness, even when you get into more serious diseases, there's a stagnation, so that this universal current would begin working into these areas that are stagnant and push their way through and open or clear those memories, violations, and or injuries. Now, we're not saying every time, remember that this is a practice, but when we talk about the meridian system, this is the easiest way to kind of give the short version. Along with the vascular system in the body, which obviously carries blood and oxygen and nutrients throughout the body, there is also the meridian system, okay? But the meridian system is non-ductory, which means you can't see it, right? And I mean, I know that you've studied this, and also it's well known in Chinese medicine. And throughout this meridian system, so we're going to call it the vascular system for consciousness, right? This is the vascular system for consciousness. So normally in the West, somebody might go many lifetimes without ever feeling the meridian system in the body. The meridian system is broken down into the nadis, of which, from what we know now, and there may be new findings, there are 72,000 channels or nadis within the meridian system. And these nadis also work in alignment with the non-ductory system of the chakras, of which we know there are 7, but the truth is that there are 72 chakras. And so each energy center is tied to a different energetic of, let's just call it, well-being, or a human component of how we can live our fullest life. And I'm not going to go through all of them right now, because I don't think that everybody who's listening would be completely interested if I get really, really geeky about it. But we'll just start with the Muladhara, which is the base chakra or non-ductory energy center. When you begin this breath, prana is going to begin to rise from the sacrum. There's a belief that there is a 3-coiled energy center that's wrapped around the sacrum that is lying dormant. And in order to initiate movement in it, there are different ways of, quote unquote, initiating this movement, which is also known as awakening, right? Awakening. That through this breath, you are stimulating the muladhara, or the base non-ductory gland. And when it begins to spin, that there is a freeing up in that area, right? There is a liberation of that area in the body. And as the energy continues to rise from the muladhara up what's called the sushumna, which is we're going to call it the non-ductory spine. So it's a tube that runs from the sacrum up to the crown, the saraswaha, or the 1,000-petal lotus, they refer to as in the East, that the energy continues to spin all of the non-ductory systems, the chakras, the 7 that we know, and that if somebody was very saatvik or clear and or prepared, that their very being might exit out of the saraswaha, the 1,000-petal lotus, and the person would experience complete liberation from the confines of the physical body, go into a state of what we refer to as samadhi, or the breathless state. There's no respiration. It's the state of just being. There is no I in that state. It's when you grok or become all with everything in existence, and then eventually that there would be and that you come back into body. Some people who are more experienced would be really excited about their last trip, wherever they journeyed to, and others might feel a little unusual in their suit. It's been completely oxygenated. Pain and suffering has left the body in certain areas. I'm not going to say that it all happens right away. It depends how deep those woundings are. But that, again, in a very brief form, one of the things that we pride ourselves on in the breath center's teachings is that we are covering much more than intuition and you're a healer and find your medicine and play your frame. We are going into the history, of the root of prana and kundalini, and giving people a really, really great base, a yogic background, so that they have more confidence, and so that we're also honoring the lineage. So we cover this in much more depth in the trainings, but that'll kind of give you a little bit of an idea. And if people are curious and they've never seen like a picture of this before, they can Google Alex Gray chakra on Google, and you'll see a picture of the meridian system and these 72,000 nadis that we're talking about right now.
Excellent. I loved that. Thank you so much for the picture that you painted with it all.
It's definitely very layman. I want to tell everybody that it's just a hint into what's really involved, because we're studying it right now in depth. And boy, I don't know if I'll ever get a true understanding of it, but at least I will have studied,
Well, it reminds me in a lot of way, a lot of science these days is focused in on genetics, for example, these reductionistic nitty-gritty details of what I see as very much the mystery of life. Yet we are eager to figure it all out and have some understanding of the greatest mystery that is, in my opinion and belief, way beyond mental conceptual understanding. It's an experiential phenomenon, which when we have the experience, it's like, well, it doesn't matter what happened. Like, why would, on some level, why would we waste any energy in trying to understand what's happening when we know that it's vast. So.
I just had that conversation with my with my Chinese medicine doctor the other day. Talked
Yeah.
for about 45 minutes. He was talking about the media and young people and how we've gotten soft in America. And I said to him, I actually saw an amazing amount of relief on his face. I said, as a species, we're just not mature enough yet. You know, we have to accept. It's beautiful that we're striving, though. Mm-hmm. Right? Like that, we want that is beautiful.
Sure.
But where we are now is so far beyond where we were 50 years ago. I mean, the acceleration of technology and knowledge and medicine and wellness, I think that we're just beginning to integrate some of these things. You get a lot of people in holistic medicine that will talk or have opinions about the Western system, and the Western system saves lives every day. Yes, there are people who become reliant on pharmaceuticals. Like, you can talk about all the things that are not working, but Western medicine saves lives. Mm-hmm. And for people like you and me, and I know a lot of the younger generation, apothecary and having your own pharmacy in your home based on herbs is, yes, much more attractive than going and taking pharmaceuticals. So there's definitely an increase in awareness around these practices. And I think that's why we came, to be quite frank.
Yeah, for sure. Well, a thing that I wanted to pick apart back in your story was you mentioned the concept of all of this happens, this awakening happens under the right conditions, under saatvik conditions. So could you just speak for a minute or two about creating saatvik conditions in the body?
Absolutely. I'm going to give you a real clear rundown. Okay.
All right.
When we wake up in the morning, we're supposed to get out of bed, and that's supposed to be at around 4:30 before everybody else gets up. Sleeping in is a tamasic or a lethargic state. It sets up the day in a really bad way. So we're supposed to get up, get in a very, very cold shower immediately. Okay. And, maybe drink a glass of warm water. Cold beverages are not okay. And begin our practice. And the practice would consist of maybe, let's say, 30 to 45 minutes of asana. And yes, I am talking about such a broad spectrum that I'm not going to say one lineage is better than another. But for people that are more kapha or carry more weight, an accelerated active practice would be better for balance, because everything's about balance in our practices, right? And for somebody that was very ectomorphic, or what we call pitta vata in Ayurveda, would need a slow practice to balance them, because they are already in the fire or air element. And then we would go into a pranayama practice, and then we would go into a meditation, right? And then the only things that we would be putting in our body would be organic, plant-based nutrients. So very, very dark green, leafy greens, a lot of juicing, a lot of lightly steamed vegetables, of which you would also consume the water, because the minerals leached out of the water should also be consumed. A lot of salads, and you would stay away from certain things. Most people don't realize it, but tomato is very high in acid for most people. Eggplant, nightshades are very tough for certain people to digest. Salt and pepper or certain spices are not supposed to be consumed to keep the body in a sattvic state. Although, yes, they taste really good. And I know that there are different people require different things. I'm just giving a general push through here. We would stay away from media. There would be no screens. There would be no phones, and we would be in nature a lot more, and we'd be doing more writing and singing and dancing.
Love it. Love it. That really is a concise picture of, I mean, we call it Satvik in Ayurveda, but it's really just a balanced lifestyle. And that's what Satvik is. Sattva is.
I mean, that's what all of your years of education, and now the folks that you work with, after everything that you've taken in, I've read a lot of your material, and it leans towards this, where you're actually giving people if people do what you tell them to do, they won't need to come back to you again.
That's that. Thank you for mentioning that, because that's the idea. We live in this model, in this system where it's like, you want the customers to return, and it's all based on this, that sort of relationship. But hey, I always, it's on my website. I say, you are your own healer. Let me show you how.
Yeah.
And then when it's embodied and understood, then the healer, in my opinion, is there for catastrophic guidance, or just kind of, support or camaraderie. But there's not someone's responsible for their own health and well-being, essentially.
Especially now, because
Yeah.
we've lost it.
Yeah.
And as we're aging, and when we're exposed to toxins just even in the air, forget the food and water, and forget the environment, forget all the bad media and everything that we see out there. I mean, you make a decision, right? It's like been a lot of political debate in the market, everybody, and I've just said, hey, if I were to transition tomorrow, I would not be focused on what was going on in politics. I'm going to create the most peace and ease in my immediate environment that I can, that's possible. I'll be 50 here during Bhakti Fest this year, during one of our popular festival retreats. I'll turn 50, and we need to begin taking better care of ourselves, because as the body ages, and we're taking in all of these, the body is sensitive, so it requires more self-care. I didn't know that you had on your website that statement about gearing people to their own inner ability to heal. That's bold for somebody in your profession, and I respect that a lot.
Yeah. It's funny, because sometimes when I say it to people, they kind of, they feel good, and they kind of like, oh, that's nice of you to say, but it's like, I mean it. It's true. It's not a nice thing to say. It's the truth.
Right.
So if we could, I'd like to shift the conversation toward other things that you do besides the breath work. And my understanding of what you do, it's very much blending, and like, it's this pot, and you put a lot of things in it, and it's it's the breath work, it's more shamanic stuff as well, it's plant medicine stuff as well, and it's this big concoction.
I knew he would get here. You can see for people who know, there was a time during my yogic journey, during bhajan, or the practice of yoga through singing the names of the creator, that somebody had come up to me and said, you should really study the Four Winds, which is a educational system put together by Dr. Alberto Valedo. And it's a shamanic practice. And I was really offended when they told me that. And I said, well, I've got yoga and I've got my teachers, and I don't need that stuff, And then when we opened the studio, lo and behold, one of Dr. Valedo's teachers was there teaching what we call the medicine wheel. And I was there for every teaching. And first I studied the energetic tools through the what we would refer to as the Quiero tribe out of Peru. They speak Quechua. We learned fire ceremony. We learned how to work with sand paintings. We learned how to dream. We learned all of these very beautiful meditative practices that were very much actually in parallel with yoga, but maybe much more hands-on with the earth and the animals. And I really got a kick out of it. But we were told, we don't do medicine. It's not something that we do in this lineage. We dream. That was what we did. And so I studied that for about 5 years. And then I had a child, and there was this very powerful experience where an Native American Indian elder, we've also been involved in the Red Road, or what we call the Middle Way, the Native American traditions with Sweat Lodge and and 4-day journeys on the hill without food or water. And I've not done it, but obviously Sundance is a big part. It's kind of like really serious renunciation that brings these states. I would find that when I was going through a very difficult time, that one of my, at that partner's students, whatever, I don't like to call people students, but we'll just call her a partner. She had come through our program, the Breast Center program, this 9-month gestation, and she was asked to be the godmother of our son. And because we were going through so many challenges, she needed to go see a Native American elder and asked her questions. Hey, should I really become the godmother of this child whose parents seem to not be able to, get along? And yeah, in all transparency, that's what it was like at first. It's difficult for new parents, and equally beautiful. But the woman said, this guy who you're talking about, he needs to stop pretending that he knows everything and drink from the plants. But he will miss his opportunity because of his arrogance and lack of respect for the person that will bring it to him. And that really hit me hard. Like, I didn't even really know what she meant. And sure enough, because I really love the mystical stuff. So of course I'm creating this, I'm composing this incredible symphony. And what happened was, over a 3 or 4 day period, I thought about what she was speaking about. And I remembered there was a guy that helped me get the Breast Center off the ground, who had sent me an email and had said that there was going to be a doctor in town that I should go and see. I had discarded the email because we all get so many emails these days. And I went and I found it in my box. And sure enough, it was a very, very highly respected elder gentleman who was going to be pouring ayahuasca locally. I had already gone through years of the shamanic work, and I knew absolutely that this was my time. I was not hunting for it. I was scared, if not anything else, but knew that for my baby and for my family's well-being, this was something that was obviously an assignment. So I went and sat, and over a 6-year period, accumulated a number of sits with a particular lineage, which was based out of the Santo Daime Church. One of the first legalized group to be working with this sacred medicine. And this has gotten very, very popular today. Now we would say, I just got back from Peru, but I did have involvement with the church and also with the Shipibo tribe from Peru, and spent some time in Pucallpa with 3 or 4 masters, some of them not even Peruvian, some of them young French people that were very gifted. I mean, really gifted shaman. What I can tell you from my experience with that is that, number one, I have never been so clear as to what my path was. The medicine actually showed me how it wanted me to work with the breath. So what it said to me, this intelligence said, not everybody will come to me, not everybody will, but the breath will reach everybody, and you now are me. And that by singing the sacred songs of the lineages that you have studied under and creating a ceremonial experience, you will be able to create the same awakening that I bring people through a full ceremony in 90 minutes. So instead of people being sitting in a room with buckets and purging and the byproduct of what all of that can create, which could also be bifurcation and challenges what we call spiritual emergency, which is actually a spiritual emergence, but it happens too rapidly for the physical form because we live in such a dense plane, right? It's too quickly. that we could do this with the breath and that it would happen in a much more gentle way. And so, yes, when we started incorporating, and thank God that these yoga producers were open to this, because we could have easily been cut from the roster, because when we started, we were just doing Hindi chants and Sufi chants and singing, you know, the Hanuman Chalisa or whatever was appropriate for our bhakti lineage, that they, because of the overwhelming desire that people had to come and have this experience, we were allowed to continue, and bless their hearts. Yes, we've created a medicinal ceremony where the medicine is actually the individual and their breath, and where they can experience in 90 minutes what it would feel like to be in a medicine ceremony held in a very, very safe container with therapists and integrators and our incredible guardians that come and train for 4 months before they come in with us to help facilitate. The shamanism piece, I can't deny, has been truly, truly powerful, so much so that I've taken very much a almost back seat and allowed it to drive. We don't sit with the medicine anymore after my visit to with the Shipibo tribe and speaking with the Shipibo Indians. But we do offer this same experience in our pranayama practice.
Yeah, I love that. I love that the energy of the energy and the intelligence of the plant medicine comes through what you do, but you don't need to, you know, have your bucket and you know, sit for 12 hours and you know, it seems like the graceful path and the gentle path, like you said. I'm just curious, in your experience thus far with the more shamanic breath work, are there any concrete kind of examples of how that has changed your experience or the experience for participants in breath work once you wove in the plant medicine intelligence, without the plant medicine, of course, but the more shamanic, the medicine wheel?
Yeah, I mean, we've been fortunate enough to meet what I call medicine family all over the world, who are really happy that they are exposed to maybe something that's a bit more gentle.
You're talking about medicine family, meaning people who have been exposed and experienced with plant medicine, but then come into the breath and say, oh, this is
the same thing.
This is the same thing, but much more accessible.
Much more gentle. We always ask before taking sacrament that she be gentle, because it is not necessarily a gentle path. And please remember also that when you look at the paths of awakening, or the different opportunities that people have based on their social style, based on, are they analytical, are they heart-based, is it more about action, that drinking plant medicine is as ancient a yogic practice as it is a Brazilian or Colombian or a Peruvian practice, because the yogis were drinking soma. So this was also very much a medicine community, but the soma has been protected and guarded. It has not been put out into less than responsible hands. So we've been studying, I can tell people, Swami Satchidananda Saraswati is an incredible, incredible teacher of the paths to awakening. And he has a document online that I believe is called The Dangers of Kundalini Awakening. And it gives I know it's a strong name, I don't want to scare anybody off. It just talks about what's appropriate for certain people and what's appropriate for others, so that you can easily find your path. I mean, it's becoming more clear and more clear as we study. but the plant path is an accelerated one. And if somebody who is really, really sensitive and gentle, and especially going through transition, comes to it when they're not ready or prepared. I was very lucky. As a matter of fact, I've been very lucky each time to have been introduced to the breath after a 40 or 38-day cleanse, to have been brought to the medicine after 4 or 5 years of energetic studies. I was prepared, and I didn't mean to necessarily prepare myself. It was almost like, there was an intellect out there that said, okay, you've done some work now here's the byproduct of it. And I've had 2 or 3 of those experiences in my life, but now it's so readily available. I just want to say, be careful, because even with the breath work, we do a little bit of a kind of like a disclosure at the start now. And we say, hey, you may not be ready for this. If not, we're going to play some music. You can wrap up your mat and come back at a time where this might be more appropriate for you. This can create a lot of mental or physical, emotional release. We don't want you running off to work right after the session. Try to give people a better base rather than this be so loosely shared in the spiritual community, like everybody's got to get this. Right? Because that's not the root of the teachings, and it's not the root of the teachings in the shamanic world. But if we can utilize the songs, which are actually the frequency of the plants themselves, and then to understand that those individual plant energies can be brought in, if there's, we'll say, if there's a contract, meaning that it's permission based for the individual, they're ready for it, they can absolutely have a medicine experience before they've ever sat with the medicine. And this is happening time and time again. As a matter of fact, we just did a session where I didn't even bring anything with me, not a rattle or a drum. We sang a couple verses of a song. I had everybody breathe without any background music or anything. And 3 or 4 people came up and said, I just had an ayahuasca ceremony and I don't even know what that is. And we didn't play any music or anything. So I just don't want anybody to think that it's some magic that we're holding, that it's identified or exclusive to the breath center. I believe that this is collective consciousness now utilizing ancient technologies that are completely organic, because awareness has to be achieved at some point.
Well, that leads me to ask, so why are we doing this? What's the point?
I don't think there's a choice. I will say one thing. In level 3 of the breath centers program, and at the end of the gestation in the east direction, we begin to discuss so the why is where we came from. Because right now there's all this mysticism about it, right? Like God, 7 days, or whatever it is. Like, and everybody's kind of going, I don't know. There is some thought around the 24-hour clock and the 24,000 to 26,000 year cycle of what we call the Yuga. And if you've read about the Yugas by Sri Yukteswar, who was Paramahansa Yogananda's teacher, who was taught by Lahiri Mahasai, who was the direct disciple of Babaji, right? We're talking about the grandfather of all of these practices, who supposedly was in communication with non-sentient intellects. We'll go ahead and cut that there. That's level 3. That during this last cycle, that the precession of the equinox created a bit of a rumbling here, which caused the ice age, which obviously caused a melt, which would have been attributed to Noah, and remember the story of Noah getting all the animals, and because when the ice age thawed, there was a lot of water and a lot of stories told about this, but that there is an organic explanation as to why this is happening. And the reason why it's happening is because the highest human potential had already been achieved in our past. And we took a hit, and it created a collective amnesia. And we're just really starting to come out of it now. And I'm not going to talk about malefic or benefic intellects and get into a whole bunch of silly talk, but I will say that this is all organic, and that there's a reason why we've been sleeping, and it's really hard to come back from that type of blow, especially when you're if you are one of the most sensitive, sentient beings, meaning associated with Earth, and you take a big bump, it's going to take you a while to understand and accept what's happened. And slowly now, as all of these things are being revealed in the patriarchy and as it's dissolving, also there are truths being revealed slowly and gently that allow the why that you've asked to be answered with clarity. That's kind of the best way I can put it without it sounding like some magical far out thing.
It already it sounds magical enough.
Well, I wish it didn't. I wish.
No, what I mean by that, or what I hear you saying really is, we're at this place collectively in our consciousness because of whatever is happening in the universe and the precession of the equinox and 26,000 year cycles and whatever is happening. We're at this place where we're awakening, and experiences that, such as those through breath work, through plant medicine-less breath work, like you're facilitating,
right?
That those provide an anchoring reference point on here and now in this physical plane, on this planet, in this experience, where we can hold ourselves in a more consciously awakened state to support the continual evolution of the collective.
It's exactly what you said. It's exactly what you said. And there are still some very sleepy energies that would continue to clumsily, utilize the Earth's resources rather than spread them out. But this is the seed that must happen in order for us to go, oh, wow, there's a better way, or there's a different way. When I'm working with Eli and he says, well, hey, we can make a better choice, I don't say no or yes. It's, hey, we can make a better choice. We're just learning as we awaken how to make better choices. It's kind of like a cause and effect, or you learn by, I'm not going to call it error, but we learn by experiences that can be improved on. We all want to improve. It's gorgeous. Think about that. Like, like all of these people that want to improve, like that is just in itself enough, instead of measuring how much we've improved or if we're going to make it.
Yeah. And I always remember that, you're talking about the sleepy energies and the energies that are kind of, just not there, and it's not a bad thing or a negative thing. It's just, they're not there, and that's okay. And I just, it was brought to my awareness by some spiritual teacher of some sort was talking about, these people are dying, they're dying, they're leaving the planet, and the souls that are coming into the planet are, more open to the awakening that we're talking about. So it's just, in some sense, we just have to be patient and wait for people to die. Which, I mean, that's how it was phrased to me. And, I got a little chuckle out of it, but it's like, okay, it's true.
I'm very excited to have my own, just speaking from personal place, to have my own understanding that these are difficult times, and I came specifically to help to chaperone and usher in myself, my son, and anybody who's willing or has the desire to take a look. It's very much like the medicine that you're practicing. Your people that come to you, they won't be going to the pharmacy consecutively over and over again to refill prescriptions. They'll find true health through a minimum of visits with you. And for me, that feels, there's a resolve in that. It
Yeah.
feels really good. This is the Kali Yuga. Everything that no longer serves is, let's say that the curtain is dropping on Wiz. You can see what's behind. It's very clear this is the time of knowing. We've just gone through the Lionsgate portal, right? And we're getting more in touch. And it's great. It feels good. I'm glad that it's gentle,
Yeah.
because I know I couldn't handle it on a grand scale. If it was big, it would, boy, I'd be flattened, because I wouldn't say that I'm the hardest individual. We had a lot of military personnel at our session last night in San Diego, and as kind as can be and tough. They had big experiences, and they were like, you think that's going to crack those people open? And it's like, wow, that was incredible. Okay, what's next? It's just interesting to watch. So I'm glad that it's gentle, and that we have the opportunity to share in this way.
Mm-hmm.
Someday, this material may be used, and they'll say, wow, look how archaic it was. They were just starting to learn about the nadis back then. Is that amazing? My son will say, my dad did breathwork. They were just thinking about self-love. Can you believe that? They were working on self-love in 2020.
Right. Yeah.
I like that. We're standing for evolution, for this liberation is everything for me. People go, "You're a liberal?" I go, "Oh, you don't even understand. Far beyond. I'm liberated."
Love it. On that note, just kind of aiming to hone in on the end of our conversation, I'd love to leave on a note of encouragements or inspiration or wise words focused on anyone who is coming into their awakened consciousness.
Yeah.
Is breath work necessary? Should they find you and sit in a circle and start breathing? If so, where can they find you? And of course, what else?
Well, definitely you can find us at thebreathcenter.com, TheBreathcenter.com. Is it necessary? No. It's not necessary for you to breathe with us. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of qualified breathwork facilitators facilitating breathwork, some more studied than others. The people that I would say need to come to us are the people who are very serious about understanding the root of these teachings, and very serious about ethics and morals and conduct and code. Again, there's been far too much clumsiness around these sacred practices that have kind of given them a subjective perspective or perception of some people. I would say if you're just coming in, the most important thing, absolutely 100%, is what you put in your body and that you begin practicing Ashtanga yoga. My teacher, I was listening to a piece from him the other day called Transformation of a Man. He's a tenured professor at Stanford, Yale, and Harvard University. I'll challenge any analytical doctor to go up against that. And he became completely realized, free, and successful in all ways through Ashtanga yoga. He said, I will not proselytize for Ashtanga yoga. I will I will say, you must be doing yoga if you have been chosen during this time. You should feel very lucky. Yes, hearing things, all of it, your sensitivities are heightened. You are overtly emotional. You're scared. You are absolutely in the right place. Seek out either a book on Ashtanga, or just go on Google. How incredible is technology that you can study that way, right? And absolutely devote yourself to single pointed practices that integrate you into yourself. Start drinking a boatload of green juice, stay away from processed foods, stay away from media, all that you can. And if you're going to see any medical professional, go see Dr. Alter or email Dr. Alter, because now these are remember that medicine is always improving. So if you're looking at older generations, I'm talking about preventative medicine. I'm not talking about if you already have a serious ailment, then you're going to have to deal with that in a different way. But if you're working with something and you're not feeling well, go see Dr. Alter, begin practicing going internally. Okay. And it's, some people would go, oh, it's a plug. This is not a plug, because nobody's getting rich here. Okay. This is guidance from a place of love and concern. And because I've already been on the other side, you will never drive a fast enough car, find a good enough man, be in the perfect marriage. You will never find anything outside of yourself that will integrate you in a way where you'll finally find the resolve that you're seeking. The only way to do it is internally, and it's by connecting with the earth and by surrender and acceptance. That's the most that I can give people, and just say again, if you are experiencing these things and you don't have a container for it, reach out to us. If you just go to the Breath Center page, on the front of the page, there's a chat window at the bottom. That'll come directly through to my cell phone. You can just type in any question. We'll get back to you like right away. If you are interested in exploring the frequencies of plant medicine and this accelerated healing, if you are ready for accelerated healing at a rapid rate and you are clear that this is one of your duties, we're going to be all over the United States. And what an incredible way to share your art or to reach your highest potential without a life coach, without having to spend a load of money. All of this is extremely organic, and we owe it to our kids. You want to leave a sustainable place for the children that you're talking about coming in right now that are going to inhabit. This is the only way. There are not other, you cannot find it outside of yourself. It's got to be done internally. And it's an inside job. That's what I can say. And I love you. Thank you for,
Boom.
Yeah. Thank you. And mic drop, right?
Yeah, I know. Boom.
Yeah.
Michael, it's been a joy and a pleasure. You said you had something to read? Do you want to end with your reading, or?
Can I do that? Do we have enough time for me to read a little something?
As long as it's not the full novel, but I'd love to hear what you wanted to read.
Let me read just a couple paragraphs to you here. I'll just take a couple minutes. I'm going to talk a little bit about yoga and shamanism. So while there's been many books on yoga who've been written by yogis, very few books on shamanism have been written by shamans. The scholars have believed that yoga and shamanism were very different practices. Scholars claim that for the yogi, achieving samadhi, or the state of bliss, involves focusing the mind on a single point and completely mastering of oneself. Why shamans merely attain ecstasy, a euphoric state in which the ego dissolves, but which doesn't lead the shaman to achieving mastery of the self. Why this is still a popular notion about shamanism, it's incorrect, right? Because findings show that with the high shamans of the Americas, that they show that the goals of the yogis and the shaman are identical. Both the yogi and the shaman do away with their past and the ties that keep them bound to their karmic and family histories. This is extremely important, dissolving your thought patterns and belief systems around family. They also learn to break free of time to taste infinity, and in doing so, reach an unconditioned natural state where they recover their original self. This is an incredible writing that for those that are interested in these type of materials, you can sign up for our newsletter. We put out something maybe during season, we do quite a bit more, but maybe once or twice a month, we'll be sharing the sutras and these different teachings. And it's interesting how the two are coming together, just like the left and right hemisphere. Yeah. Right? The left hemisphere, that's the thinking mind, that's America, that's the West. Then you've got the shamans who are the love and open-hearted, the right hemisphere, and they're all coming together now.
All together now.
All together now.
All together now. Left and right and center and, upside down, right side up. We're all together. Love it. Well, Michael, it's been a joy and a pleasure to connect, and thank you for your time and your energy and your wisdom and It's been beautiful. So
it's been awesome to reconnect with you. I wouldn't.
Yeah.
There's nothing that I'd rather be doing. Really cool. Thank you for letting me share.
Yeah, thanks for tuning in, and peace and love. And until next time.